Hello, everybody. This is Cody Bateman. Welcome to our Relationship Marketing Podcast show. Very, very excited for the guests that we have on for you today. And I just want to reach out to all of you who have been listening in. The viewership keeps growing. Lots of people are starting to listen into the podcast from all over the world. In fact, today's guest is coming all the way from Melbourne, Australia. I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah. And our guest today is from Melbourne, Australia. We're really excited to have her on the show today. In fact, I'm going to introduce her real quick, and then I'm going to go into some of the bio stuff for her because I think you kind of need to hear where she's been and what she's been doing out there. So without further ado, Bernadette McClelland from Melbourne, Australia. How are you today?
I'm really good, Cody. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Love that Australian accent. Makes me miss Australia. It's one of my favorite places in the world to go to. In fact, Melbourne is one of my favorite cities in all the world. And where do you live? Like right downtown, or where do you live?
So I'm probably 25 minutes out of the CBD, but I'm right on the cusp of the city and the country. So out my window, I've got cows and vineyards and all the rest of it. So perfect spot.
Well, we love Melbourne because it's kind of like a melting pot. There's people from all over the world that live there, and it's just a lot of fun to go and visit.
It is a great city.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to explain to our guests a little bit about you. And just allow me, if you will, those of you who are listening in on a YouTube, we're going to actually show you some things on the screen so you'll be able to see it. Bernadette has a new book that's just came out recently. She's going to show the cover of that book to us today and a couple other things. But let me tell you a little bit about Bernadette. She's coached Harvard MBA students on their sales enablement curriculum. She's been the Master Asia Pacific Coach for Anthony Robbins across 12 countries. She's authored 5 books on leadership and sales transformation, including her latest book, The Art of Commercial Conversations. I'm real excited about that title, by the way, and can't wait to get into that. The Art of Commercial Conversations, Drive Revenue, Increase Margin, and Sell a Difference. So the subheading's clever, the headline's clever, and we're excited to take a look at that book and explore it a little bit with you today. Bernadette has won a coveted Australian Telstra Award for Business Excellence and continually shares her ideas around behavior, the brain, and business growth on stages in the UK, Europe, Thailand, India, New Zealand, Australia, and North America. In fact, I think you're coming to North America here in April, where you'll be speaking at the Outbound Conference, Atlanta, Georgia. Is that right?
Absolutely. Cannot wait.
Well, we're excited to see you there. It's going to be a lot of fun. So let's jump in. This show is about relationship marketing. And as most people know, I've got the book, Power of Human Connection, How Relationship Marketing is Transforming the Way People Succeed. We have featured stories in here from people all over the world. And I know that as I look at some of your content, you talk a lot about relationships. I call you one of those smart people. Like you're one of those smart people. Like you write smart people books, The Art of Commercial Conversations. I love the depth that you get into when it comes to discussing the sales process. People that are listening to this show are really into what is today's sales process and how is today's sales process different than perhaps the sales process of 10 years ago. Relationships obviously are a big part of that. So what I'd like to do is just jump right in. Tell us a little bit about this book, The Art of Commercial Conversations. For our YouTube listeners, if you could just show that to us so we can see the beautiful jacket design there. Yeah, there you go.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. So we've got the $ and the heart because both are important.
Okay, well, there's a great way to start. So the name is The Art of Commercial Conversation with a $ and a heart sign. You say both of those are crucial. So tell us what you mean by that.
It's we talk about sales having changed over the years, and if you really go back to, gosh, I don't know, the agrarian economy or even before then, where bartering, it was a giving thing, it was a reciprocity based thing where you would swap one good for another. So it really was a value of exchange. And, you know, we come full circle now and we're where we are today, and nothing much has changed. Like at the heart of selling, you still have got to exchange value. So your goods for $1 or your goods for another, you know, piece of goods or what have you. And if you break down, or if you do some understand that the actual word sell comes from the Old English word sellen, and that actually means to give. So, you know, my take on the whole philosophy around selling is that we have to stand firm in our unwavering belief, I guess, in the value of what we're providing to somebody, and not be frightened to actually ask for a fair exchange for that value.
Okay, so that's interesting. So you're saying there's been an evolution that's come full circle. The early days of commerce was about trade, where it was about relationship. Is like, you know, you'd meet people.
Totally.
And back in those days, you did business with those that you know, like, and trust. And so, and a lot of it was trade. It wasn't money. It was trading a product for a product or whatever. And then we evolved more into traditional commerce, if you will. I don't know the right way to say it. Currency came into the equation. We began to use currency to trade goods. And there's a long timeline of that. So talk to us about, I'm really interested that you say there's an evolution. We've gone from relationships as the key to, in the middle, there was a kind of a commerce thing. And now we're back to relationships. So talk to us about the middle right now.
So I guess, yeah, good point. So, you know, we've gone from the farmers, the agrarian economy, and then, you know, somebody that was as a result of somebody discovering the plow. And so, you know, farming industry was born. You know, hundreds of years later, somebody thought about the steam engine or the printing press. And so then we come, and this is the beginning of that whole industrial economy, or industrial revolution. And so as a result of that, we've all of a sudden got hierarchy, and we've got mass production of goods, and we've got these goods have got to get out and be sold. So, you know, bring these people on to go out and sell. And let's, you know, reward them for the sale. So we've got this whole yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full sir kind of culture that we're working in, and the rise of the factories, and you know, by the way, you know, we'll pull these people off the farm and we'll give them a pay packet, and we'll say to them, you know, bring your kids along too, and we'll build a building next door and we'll call it a school, you know. So, you know, we've got this whole hierarchical, if you like, boss worker kind of like environment. And then, you know, it wasn't that long ago, you know, a guy called Tim Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web. And now we have a different kind of commercial environment happening. But with that comes a high level of personal connection as well. And I mean, we're sitting here talking today, and the wonderful Bart and Laura, you know, they've introduced me to you. So this is a direct result of, you know, the connection economy that we're in from a technological perspective. But then there's another part of this as well, and that's the connection economy from a person-to-person perspective. So we've got to be really mindful that, and in bringing sales into this as well, we've got to be really mindful that we don't just rely on technology to connect with people, that we actually still have that whole human element.
Okay, so I want to talk about that, the whole technology. So you talk about pre-industrial revolution, then we have the industrial revolution where things began to be mass produced. Thus, there was a growth of the sales profession, if you will. Lots of people went out and sold products, and, you know, it became about the pitch. It became about the presentation, about the close, you know, get out there and quotas, you know, go hit your quotas, because we're going to mass produce this product. You need to go sell the product, big presentation to sell the product. And that went on for years and years and years, hundreds of years. And then we get into what we call the what I guess we'd call it the information age. Of course, information
Yeah.
age, the tail end of that is, of course, the advent of the internet, and now all the internet stuff, which we continue to have a transactional sell, if you will, versus a relationship sell. In fact, you just mentioned that even today, so today I can build a website. I can create a funnel system. That's a big catchword now, is funnels, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Go build a funnel, and the funnel's going to go find all these magical leads of people, and it's going to pull it into your funnel, and you're going to go through the funnel. It's going to end up on your website, and they're magically going to purchase, send, and put in their credit card and send you money.
And then you wake up.
And then you wake up. That's right. That's right. But I do want to speak to that, because a lot of people believe, because when we talk about relationship marketing, I get that a lot. It's like, what are you talking about? I could just go build a website. I don't need that. I don't need to know anybody. I don't need to know nothing. You know, I'm just going to build a website, get some leads coming in, the whole bit, and I'm going to make millions of dollars. Is that a myth? Is there some reality to it? And where is that? Where is the balance? Because we're claiming, you and I both, I think, are claiming that we're in an age now where relationships are critical to the sell. So the heart, as you say, is critical to the dollar sign.
Correct.
There's internet marketers out there that say that's hogwash. So talk to us about that.
Look, I've got, you know, my thoughts on a couple of those kind of angles. Just get rid of that. Yes, inbound is definitely works. Like, I mean, if you've got your whole, I have an inbound strategy as well. And so, you know, that works, but it's actually working because there's a person behind it as well. This whole, you know, go live a life with your laptop on a beach somewhere and, you know, build that funnel. I don't know anyone who's done that successfully. The only ones I seem to know who are making money about that are selling to people, selling that to people, selling that dream.
Selling
So,
the dream.
yeah.
Selling the dream.
Yeah. So that's, you know, and I have never really delved into that side of things. So I'm not really able to kind of give you my opinion apart from what I've just said. What I do believe in is that inbound works when the company or when the personality behind it is actually providing value.
Okay.
And that value, that whole value has got to be seen to direct somebody to a funnel, but it's got to be real value. That's where, you know, from my perspective, and that value comes back to how you interact or how you engage with people on social or outside of social. So for me, this whole relationship marketing absolutely works. And the relationship, and I love the fact in your book where you say everybody hangs their hat on marketing first.
Right.
When the relationship has got to precede the marketing, and sometimes they could go together hand in hand.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, this is good. This is really good stuff. So the whole internet marketers, you know, it's interesting because I know a lot of internet marketers, and it's interesting how strong of relationships they do have with people. And I love what you said is that, you know, when they're out there providing value on social media and whatever, lots of value. Those who succeed at those funnel inbound type of stuff provide lots of free value. That in and itself is a mechanism, if you will, for creating relationship. You're providing value to other human beings. So you are creating relationships. Now, you may not know the people, but you're creating relationships, leveraging technology to reach people. You're creating relationships by giving to them. And that's a key word, is give. You know, you've got to give something to somebody to create relationships. They're doing that. And then on top of it, like I said, I know a lot of these internet marketers, once they do get to know key people that are buying from them, boy, there is a lot of activity that goes on with creating relationship with existing customers that even goes offline. So,
correct.
And that's the part that the whole world out there, they don't seem to see that part of it. They just read the
I agree.
Right.
I totally agree.
Very interesting. Okay, so fun stuff. This is fun. All right, so I've got a note here that it says I may take this out of context. I don't know, but let's just talk about it. So it sounds like you're spearheading Women Who Sell, elevating women in sales across Asia Pacific. That was in your notes here. So I want to talk about that. Is your main audience women or
No.
Okay. So
No.
but you do have a
No.
focus. Yeah, you do have a focus.
Yeah. So within, and this is specifically within corporate environments. So my background is 20 years in male-dominated, very alpha male environment in the sales field in technology. And so from that perspective, my audience, working with sales teams and businesses, are predominantly male. So my database, my demographic, my audience, however you want to package that up, is predominantly male.
Okay.
I am not one of these women who jumps on a soapbox. And today is International Women's Day. And so it's very important to recognize, well, for me, it's very important to recognize women in those corporate sales environments that don't have a female figure within their work environment, so that they can have an outlet, they can have resources, they can have a community of women. And that comes from me and my background, where I had nobody in the corporate space in that whole alpha male. So I'm not one of these women who knocks the guys. I'm not into all of that at all. In fact, I think there's so much fun to be had if, people can just be themselves and be okay with being themselves. So that's kind of like a sideline, if you like. So that is something that I provide here in Melbourne to help some of the women in my community here.
I love it, love it, love it. And I love your approach. My wife, Jody, and I talk about that all the time, how the best way to empower, she's a woman, and she has a philosophy that the best way to empower women is to not associate yourself as any different than anybody else. I'm a woman, or she's a woman and I'm a man, and we're out there in the world making a living and trying to make a difference.
Absolutely.
We're all in it together. And so the separation of gender, she's not a real big fan of. It doesn't appear you are either, which is good. I like that. I really like that. Now I have to tell the audience my wife feels that way, because if I say that, there's like, whoa, did you hear him? So a guy can't say that, but a woman can. So
yeah,
interesting.
Absolutely.
Well, you mentioned being in a male-dominant world. You reached the pinnacle of corporate sales success within 3 Fortune 500 companies. So I'm assuming that that's the male-dominant world you were referring to.
Totally. Yes.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about that, about your experience with these Fortune 500 companies, and you reached the top of 3 separate ones. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Well, so it was probably predominantly one of them that I was there for 20 years. Came and went a couple of times. I was like the daughter that left home and kept coming back home, because it was kind of like a family environment, and the company was Xerox, so I don't mind saying that. So I started there as an order entry clerk. So this was kind of like pre-computers. Yeah. And then kind of moved into the credit department, moved into secretarial. Moved into sales coordinator, and it was in that role where I was doing the guys' orders, and I was doing the guys' commissions, and this is in the early 80s, early to mid 80s. And I remember looking at the commission sheets and then looking at the guy who was making all of that money and thinking, my God, if he can make that, then so can I. Right. And so they had a campaign on at that particular point in time where they were looking for trainees to come in from outside. And so I applied for the trainee role, and they knocked me back 3 times. And the reason was because I didn't have what it took to be in sales, and that I was too nice and I wasn't aggressive enough. So I marched down to the regional manager's office and I showed him how aggressive I could be. And and I got the job. So I started off as a sales trainee, and that was over a period of 10 years. And I left, and I was one of the senior specialists in the company, award-winning. Represented Australia for the whole analog to digital transition when Xerox went through that. 150 salespeople went through it. 20% didn't make it through, and I topped the class. So that was my experience there. And so as a result of that, and in that time I kind of went to a couple of other places but kept coming back. I actually left and decided to start my own business. And that business was 20 years ago. I stepped out of corporate and started my own business, doing what I'm doing now. However, limiting beliefs got in the way, and I walked away from it. So there's a whole story of the whole circle comeback. So it was about 5 years ago I came back into it.
Interesting. Okay, now I want to go through the evolution of your career, because I know that you had a peak in corporate sales. And then with the bust of 2008, you had some challenges, and then you came back to the professional area. I want to get to that in just a second, but I want to go back to when you're in corporate sales working for Xerox. I own a company called Send Out Cards. We are the premier relationship marketing system in the world today. We help people follow up with their clients and customers with real greeting cards and gifts. For years, since 2004, 2005, we have actually been featured as a case study at all the big printing, the printing conference where Xerox, you go to the Xerox booth,
of course,
and the Xerox booth at these big conferences would actually tell the Send Out Card story as a case study of how to sell digital printing.
Yeah,
because back in 2004 or 5. People are trying to figure out how digital printing is super cool, but how do you sell it? Because people in printing were used to buy, in analog printing or offset printing, the more you print, the less it costs. So right. So that's what everybody knew. So now Xerox and others come out with this new digital printing. Well, it costs the same amount of money to print one item as it does 55 items. So how do you sell that? So when you say evolution from analog into digital, I get what you're saying. I mean, that was
totally. Yeah. And that was that was the equipment I was selling. So that was my whole, application based, and Send Out Cards, perfect application for one-on-one personalization, print on demand. Perfect. So yeah.
So we run on iGens. We have the iGens, the latest iGen 250 is what we run on now. Been doing that for years and years. And Xerox cracks me up because Xerox, they have all these crazy deals that they come out with all the time, and a way for us to upgrade into the latest thing. And if you do it by this date, everything is all orchestrated. So and this is relative to what we're talking about. We talk about, that whole industrial age where it was go out and get a deal. And there was, you're talking about dangling all the different carrots in front of the buyer. So it was end of the financial year, and I'd been working on one of my clients for about a year, and we dangled a few carrots. And then it was end of financial year, and my managers called me in and said, Bernadette, it's about time that you close the deal. And I've gone, And so I've driven out to the clients, and I've sat there with the director and the print room manager, and I had the contract in my hand. And I said we chit-chatted, and I said, look, you guys, I said, I think you know why I'm here. It's the last day of the year. And I've got this contract in my hand. And I said, however, I'm not going to ask you to sign it.
And the director leaned back in his chair and he said, I am so glad that you said that, Bernadette. And he leaned forward and he said, had you have asked us one more time, you would never have got in this print room.
Wow.
And I've gone back, and I kind of just whatever I said. But the reason is that I knew, and this is where intuition comes in, this is where tapping into all of, our resources that we've got internally. My gut feel was I knew those guys long enough over that period of a year. I knew them long enough to know that they were conservative buyers, that they mocked the carrots and the incentives, and that when they were ready to buy, they would buy.
Yeah.
And so I kind of listened to that. So that's kind of tying into what you're saying as well, about the imaginative ways of getting business. So I think in my book, urgency is very important. So I'm not negating that.
Yeah.
However, there are times when our managers or people may be forced to go down a closing track in a sale, and it just doesn't feel right. And we've got to listen to that intuition, I think.
So it's interesting word you use, intuition. So how does intuition fit into the sales process today?
Um,
I think you just kind of said it. The example you gave of I'm not going to ask you for the order today.
It was an intuitive. It wasn't, and really good question that you've just asked, Cody, because my mind's just going now. Because I'm thinking, okay, at what point do you listen to your intuition and know at a gut level that is the right thing or the right path to go down, or how do you know if it's fear?
Right. Good.
That's
a good question. That's a good question.
But I'm just thinking out loud here. So once again, I think, we talk about relationship marketing. We talk about relationships. In my book, one of the best relationships or the most important relationships you can have is with yourself.
Right.
And so this whole getting to know yourself and being able to differentiate and be honest with yourself, like hand on heart moments to say, okay, I'm going to pick the phone up now. So something's telling me not to. Is that my intuition, or is that just the fact that I'm too scared to pick up the phone?
Right.
So, so it's really important. That's a really great discussion point, actually, is that. So I'm going to give that some thought. But I think being honest with yourself
absolutely
is key.
Okay, so you had some real success, and then you went through a challenging time of your life. 2008 seems to be a challenging year for a lot of people. I've had a lot of guests on the show that, we tanked. I hear that all the time. We tanked in 2008 because of economy or whatever. So you've gone through that gamut. You've gone through the gamut of peak sales and success, and then you hit the tanks and hit the skids. Reinvented yourself, came back, did your career again. What did you learn through that? What did you learn through the process of gaining it all, then losing it all, and then gaining it again?
Yes. So, yes, we did. We lost our business. Our family, my husband and I had a family business. We had staff. It was a good, solid business, and I got ill. So we lost a couple of houses. We lost absolutely everything, and cash and everything. And so we were on welfare in 2010, and we were in the system for a good 6 months, and we had just turned 50, and I was getting better. And so my husband took me on our first date and we went to the local pizza place, and I've got strict instructions when I tell the story. I've got to say it was gourmet pizza. And so we sat there, and I said, we've got two questions that we've got to ask ourselves. We're 50. Because my husband worked for the business as well. He was given his marching orders 3 months, at the probation period of the company that actually held their hand out to Tim and said, look, you've been buying from us for a number of years. We'll give you the job. They wanted to buy our company, and we'd said no earlier. Anyway, so 2 days before his 3 months probation was up, they called him in and they said, look, we don't need you anymore. But they had our database. So now we're both unemployed, we're both on welfare, and we're both 50. And so I said, we've got to get very clear on what the value is that we have to provide the marketplace. Like we're gonna go again, and we have to be very clear on that value. And I said, secondly, we have to know whether or not the market is prepared to pay and what they're prepared to pay for that value. So they were two very pivotal questions that we asked ourselves. And we were sitting there that night at the table, and I've reached across to grab the menu. There were 3 menus. So I've stood them up and I said to Tim, this is how we're going to do it. I said, we're going to get very clear on our purpose and what we want. That's our true north. I said, we're going to get very, very clear on who we are as individuals. And that's getting clear on our true colours. And thirdly, we're going to get very, very clear on what it's going to take for us to get ourselves out of this, and that's our true grit. So out of those 3 menus that I stood up end on end, that has morphed into becoming my business, 3 Red Folders, which stands for purpose, authenticity, and resilience. So if I go back and I look at what we learned and how we've come back out of it again, and we're riding, we're going up that crest again, it simply is know your value and stand in your power, and be prepared to share that value without any expectation of anything in return.
My goodness, this is good stuff.
Yeah.
This is so powerful, and it's so important for our listeners to really tune in and listen to the words you just said. We've gone through major transformations in our business, and, we've had successes and we've had failures, and, you have these cycles. We've had to reinvest, we've had to reinvent, we've had to do a lot of things over the years. And it's interesting because Jody and I, my wife, we've kind of reflected on all of the years of being in business and the good times and the bad, and what is it that keeps you going, and what is it that makes you successful? What is it that makes you go into challenging years? And the consensus from all of our reflection is very similar to what you just said. You have to get back to the core why, the core reason, the core value of why you're doing what you're doing. Here at Send Out Cards, we have one thing. There's one thing at Send Out Cards, and that is to help people act on their promptings to reach out in kindness. That is the one thing. It's not even relationship marketing. Relationship marketing is a byproduct of that. Because if you do reach out in kindness to others, then it's going to help you, create relationships in your marketing. And so we say we leverage what the marketplace wants from us, which is relationship marketing, but we inspire you on what you need from us, which is a way to act on your promptings to reach out in kindness. And what Jody and I, what we concluded was, if it wasn't for the possibility of us helping lots of people to act on their promptings to reach out in kindness, if it wasn't for that, none of what we've built would be worth it. It wouldn't be worth the effort. So for all of our listeners, you got to find that one thing. You got to find your one thing. You got to stay true to your why. And that's what gets you through everything. Because I'm going to tell you, and you just said it yourself, if you don't find that one thing, all of the stuff you go through, it ain't worth it. It ain't worth it. Go get a job. Go get a job, do whatever. Because it ain't worth it unless you focus on that one thing. So I really appreciate you sharing that. I thought it was very powerful.
No, my pleasure. And see, and I'll throw something else left of field. I know, the why is really important. And Simon Sinek is, his model, which you all know, the what, the how, and the why. I maintain, and I would love to have this conversation if I could one day with him. I believe that he's missing the inner circle. And that inner circle for me is the who. Because I believe that when you're very clear on who you are, then your why will actually kind of come from that as well. It's funny because I was a smoker, up until a number of years ago, and it didn't matter how many times I read that packet where it said that my limbs would fall off, my lungs would fail, my life would be... Dying was not a big enough reason for me to give up smoking.
Yeah.
So it's very important that you why, but also what's very important is understanding who you are and what makes you tick.
Oh, I love it. Really good stuff. So the art of commercial conversations. Can you hold that up for us again? Those watching on YouTube, the art of commercial conversation. That's the look of it there. How can somebody get a copy of your book?
So it's on Amazon,
okay.
and also commercialconversations.com is it's got its own landing page for hard copy over here. But at the moment, it's going up on Amazon as we speak.
Excellent. You are speaking at the upcoming Outbound conference in Atlanta, Georgia, here in the United States, and that's coming up in April.
I am. Absolutely, I am. I am looking forward to meeting these guys. They've been on my watch list for years now, and to have the the honor of coming over and joining them is just a dream come true. So not only the learnings and the networking, but sharing a couple of models that I have to share, and it's going to be a little bit different. So yeah, be fun.
Well, that's really great. So I always like to end our shows by kind of giving you the floor. Typically I ask a bunch of questions, and I always like to end by having you, it's carte blanche. This is Bernadette time. The final 5 minutes, anything that you feel like this audience needs to hear, golden nuggets, golden wisdom from Bernadette McClelland. Floor is yours.
Okay. So, gosh, this is left of field, but that's okay. So I'm going to pick a couple of threads of what we've said today. That might help your listeners. So we talked about intuition. And so I'm just going to share that because in business, intuition is fluffy. And so if we think for a moment that everything that we learn, every piece of experience that we have, every bit of conditioning, that everything that we learn, and if we do it enough times, we repeat it enough times, then we begin to see patterns out there. And so these patterns or this knowledge, they become little bits of data. And these bits of data become blocks of knowledge. And these blocks of knowledge are stored up here in our hippocampus as intuition, intuitive insights, if we let them. But business today is so much based on get the numbers. What are your ratios? Here's your KPIs. Get out there. This is the focus, so that tapping into those intuitive insights is discounted. It's valueless. But if we realize that if we do tap into that and we listen to that, it's actually going to take us down a different path than the cognitive part of our brain will take us down. So I'm not into fluffy and, sitting in a corner, yoga, posing and umming and all the rest of it. But if you start to realize that there is another part of your brain that you can activate and activate with confidence, then that's critical to your growth moving forward. So it's just tapping into that. Secondly, something else that we kind of touched on there was kindness. So you mentioned kindness. That's actually, while I'm over there, I'm speaking at Outbound, but I'm also speaking at AAISP's conference up in Chicago as well. One of my subtopics is actually kindness. So when we realize that, and this is for those people listening that are just so intent on, working and busy and getting the numbers and all the rest of it, is that our brain, the circuitry in our brain, if we're focusing on do and numbers, we can't actually access the social circuits of our brain that allow us to be present to somebody else.
Wow. Interesting.
So for the leaders out there, for the parents out there, that, we've actually got to realize that those two circuits can't operate together. So from a leadership perspective, if we want our people to know that we are with them, we are present with them, we seriously have to down tools and make a conscious effort, because if you don't, it's a little bit like muscles. We actually lose that whole social network muscle. And all we're doing is just 24/7, always on. So there's just two little things that I thought that I'd share based off a couple of things that we've said today.
Well, those are two wonderful things. So there you have it, everybody. Bernadette McClelland from Melbourne, Australia, author of The Art of Commercial Conversations. You can get a copy of it at Amazon or at commercialconversations.com. Look forward to seeing you at the Outbound Conference. And thank you so much for being part of our show today, You were absolutely amazing. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Please come on back. We do this every week. So we're going to make sure that we keep putting these podcasts out there for people to listen to as you drive down the highway. And we appreciate you all. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Cody.
If you have enjoyed this episode of the Relationship Marketing Podcast with Cody B, be sure to subscribe to the show and leave a review so that together we can get this message, The Power of Human Connection, out to the world. You can find Cody's new book, The Power of Human Connection, on Amazon or the Send Out Cards gift store.